Welcome to this press briefing. I am indeed very happy to receive President Karzai here in Copenhagen. It gives me the opportunity to repay the hospitality to the President that was granted to me when I visited Afghanistan last year. For the last 11 years, our two countries have collaborated very closely. I'm proud that thousands of Danish soldiers and advisors have made a valuable contribution to the stabilization and development of Afghanistan. The President and I have, as you saw, just signed a strategic partnership agreement. This provides us with a new and a strengthened foundation for our future cooperation. The agreement that we just signed is a token of Denmark's long-term commitment to Afghanistan, and it sends a clear signal to the Afghan people that we will remain engaged after 2014. We will assist the Afghans with an extensive aid program and with contributions to training, advising, and financing of the Afghan National Security Forces. Our focus on civil development will be stronger in the years to come. Already this year, Afghanistan will become the most important development partner of Denmark in terms of Danish development assistance. At the same time, Afghanistan confirms its commitment to ensure good governance, human rights, in particular women's rights, as well as fighting corruption. 2014 will be a crucial year for Afghanistan as the Afghan authorities will take over full responsibility for security and the majority of international troops will return home. The Afghans will also head the polls and elect a successor to the President. The President has assured me that his government will do everything they can to have a transparent and inclusive election. And I, of course, assured the President that Denmark stands ready to support the Afghan authorities in this regard. We also discussed good governance and human rights situation in Afghanistan. In recent years, there have been a number of achievements, not least for Afghan women and girls. In particular, many girls now attend school. But the results of this are still fragile, and in the coming years, it will be an important task for the Afghan government to maintain and expand this. Mr. President, your country, Afghanistan, has come a long way under your leadership. Of course, there are still challenges that remains ahead and setbacks will be inevitable, but let me assure you that Afghanistan can still count on Denmark. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. Thank you, Madam Prime Minister, for the tremendous hospitality accorded to us since our arrival the day before yesterday. Madam Prime Minister, I was honored this morning to be taken to the memorial site for your soldiers who have served around the world. I was especially struck, ladies and gentlemen, to see the place called a time, a place, a human being, where there is a memorial for the soldiers of Denmark, men and women who have served around the world. In particular, I was struck to see the names of soldiers there displayed who served in Afghanistan and who lost their lives in Afghanistan. This brings me, Madam Prime Minister, to bringing to you and through you to the people of Denmark the gratitude of the Afghan people for the help given, for the services rendered in Afghanistan. But truly, remarkably, assistance from Denmark has been concentrated in uplifting the standard of living for the Afghan people, in particular for the education of the Afghan people, for rural development, and for the improvement in the quality of life of women and the mother and child care. Madam Prime Minister, this is a worthy contribution, deserving gratitude many times over from the Afghan people. And once again, Madam Prime Minister, I thank you for this extremely valuable contribution of your people to the Afghan people. As the Prime Minister rightly remarked, today we signed an important historic agreement between us, the Afghan people, and Denmark towards a strategic partnership to the future, whereby Afghanistan will be Denmark's largest recipient of assistance. And I can assure you, Madam Prime Minister, that Afghanistan will do all it can to help you in the best dispensation of this assistance towards the results that you wish to produce in Afghanistan and towards the results that the Afghan people wish to have. The transition is working smooth and it will take place in time, and so will be the withdrawal of the international forces from Afghanistan. A year from now, Madam Prime Minister, Afghanistan will have its election. We will work hard to have it be done in a manner that's acceptable to the Afghan people. And also, we hope that this election will be assisted by the international community, so it's implemented fairly and properly. With this, Madam Prime Minister, I would like to emphasize once again, as we discussed during our lunch, that the contributions of Denmark were best used in educating the Afghan children, in uplifting the Afghan women, and in providing much needed, important rural development assistance and upliftment of society there. And I'm sure, Madam Prime Minister, you will consider that the Danish help will concentrate in the same areas as we move to the future. Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, also for your very, very kind words. I think there's a number of journalists now who would very much like to ask a question. Yeah.
First, a question to the President, Mr. Karzai, and then to the Prime Minister. Do you have an agreement about the immunity for Danish soldiers after 2014 in this new partnership? And a question to the Prime Minister. Denmark and other NATO countries has for years demanded good governance, fight against corruption. Do you see any sign that the Afghan government can deliver on that now? Thank you.
Thank you.
We did discuss the question of immunity during lunch. It's a subject between Afghanistan and NATO as a whole to discuss. So the arrangement that will be made in this regard with Denmark will be within the ambit of our agreements with NATO. That agreement is still under discussions, and as soon as we have made our final arrangements, surely I will take that to the Afghan people, and no doubt the Afghan people will have favorable consideration of our relations with Denmark, especially in the areas of where the military assistance is concerned, which will be delivered through the NATO structures. That is something that we can surely take to the Afghan people with positive results.
And in terms of the good governance question that was asked, this is something we discussed during our meeting as well, and the President reaffirmed very, very clearly that this is a task that the Afghan government will take upon themselves. There is now the elections next year, but there's also good governance in general, and the President was very clear in terms of the efforts they want to put into good governance. I think there's a question here.
Madam Prime Minister, my question is to you, Mr. Safi from Afghan Press. What is Danish rule beyond 2014 in Afghanistan? And my next question is, how much percent of the assistance money will be spent through the Afghan government budget?
Well, it is very clear that after 2014 we will no longer have combat soldiers in Afghanistan, but we will, however, help in many different ways. We are able to assist in terms of training, in terms of rule of law, in terms of education that the President just mentioned. So a variety of areas will be of our interest. And of course we will do this in close cooperation with the Afghan authorities. This is also an issue that the President and I discussed today. Jeg tror, vi skal have et mikrofon.
Hi, Mette from Reuters. Following recent clashes at the Pakistani-Afghan border, you have ordered a removal of the military gate and other Pakistani installations near the Durand line. How far are you willing to go to make sure it's followed through? And secondly, how concerned are you that the clashes will escalate?
Well, I hope the clashes will not escalate. Having said that, the Afghan government will do its utmost, all it can, to protect the Durand line and to make sure that no foreign military installations or checkpoints are present on the Afghan side of the Durand line.
Yes, Thomas Funding, Danish news channel TV2. I would like to ask the President, Mr. Karzai, a question. Right now, there's quite a big debate going on in Denmark regarding the Afghan interpreters and whether or not should grant the Afghan interpreters used by the Danish forces in Afghanistan asylum here in Denmark. What are your position in that question?
I did discuss this issue this morning with the Minister of Defense of Denmark. The interpreters have done their job. They were employed by the international presence in Afghanistan, and they interpreted between them and the Afghan people, where they did their job according to the standards set for them. They should have no problem in Afghanistan at all. The Taliban or terrorism as a threat is equally to all. So they should have no concerns there at all. But those who have violated their job descriptions, who've either misused their job description, that's the question of law. The law should take its course. Other than that, they should feel safe and secure in their own country, and they can go and find work for themselves in Afghan society, or like all other Afghans do. Or if Denmark or other governments that have employed them would like to employ them continuously in other areas of civil activity, that's welcome too.
So you don't think that they are in especially danger because of their work?
No, sir. No, sir. They're not. They're not.
Thank you very much. Last question.
I'm Jan Olsen from the Associated Press. I'd like to get back to what we spoke about earlier this morning about Guantanamo. You said that you would likely take back the Afghan prisoners in Guantanamo. Does that mean that you're in talks with the U.S. to take back the Afghan prisoners? And how many are we talking about? And do you know if any of them are involved in the hunger strike?
Well, we have been in contact with the U.S. government for now a number of years on the return of those Afghans to Afghanistan. We've also put in applications through the UN system for removing them from the UN sanctions list. So this is an issue that we have been engaged with the United States and the UN for a long time. And we want the return of those prisoners as soon as possible to Afghanistan. As far as the current hunger strike there is concerned, I hope it will be resolved soon, and I hope that the US government will apply all the proper standards of humanitarian considerations and behavior.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. Very kind of you. Thank you.